My name is Emily Carter. I'm 35 years old, and if you told me 5 years ago that I'd be standing in the middle of my very own house, keys in hand, deed in my name, mortgage signed with my sweat and sacrifice, I probably would have laughed. For years, I thought homeownership was something that happened to other people. People with husbands to split the costs, or parents with money to help out. I was never that person. But then, after a decade of working long hours at my job as a project manager, living in cramped rentals with peeling paint and broken heaters, and saying no to almost every luxury, I saved enough. I skipped vacations, skipped brunches with friends, wore the same coat winter after winter, and socked away every dollar I could. When I finally saw a modest white two-story with navy shutters go up for sale in a quiet suburban neighborhood, I didn't hesitate. I made an offer. And when the realtor called me to say the sellers had accepted, I cried, real, shaking tears. Because this wasn't just a house. It was proof that I hadn't sacrificed for nothing. The day I moved in, I stood in the empty living room with sunlight streaming through wide windows and thought, this is mine. I did this. The walls smelled faintly of fresh paint, the hardwood floors gleamed, and my footsteps echoed like music. I ran my hand along the banister of the staircase, whispering, home. I knew my parents would be surprised. I hadn't told them I was looking. That wasn't an oversight. It was intentional. For most of my life, my decisions had been subject to their commentary, and somehow, those conversations always circled back to my younger sister, Hannah. She's 2 years younger than me, married, with 2 kids already and another on the way soon, as she likes to say even when it isn't true yet. Growing up, Hannah was the golden child. My parents would beam about her report cards, her charm, her ability to light up a room. Meanwhile, I was the steady one, responsible, hardworking, the one who didn't need as much attention because I'd figured it out. Every family gathering ended with Hannah at the center of attention and me clearing dishes in the kitchen. I never complained, not out loud. But somewhere deep down, I began to realize that in their eyes, my worth was always measured against hers. So when I decided to buy a house, I kept it to myself. I didn't want advice, interference, or subtle guilt trips about how maybe Hannah's family needed it more. This was my life, my money, my decision. During that first week, I was blissfully happy. I painted the living room a soft gray, planted marigolds in the front garden, and set up my thrifted sofa in front of the bay window. Neighbors waved hello as I carried boxes inside. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. On Friday evening, I invited my parents over for dinner. I cooked lasagna, opened a bottle of wine, and waited for them to arrive. When they walked in, they smiled politely, but there was something strange about their expressions, something I couldn't quite place. They toured the house slowly, my mom trailing her fingers along the counters, my dad peering into the garage. At first I thought they were impressed, but then I noticed the way their eyes kept darting toward each other, like they were having a silent conversation. This is nice, Mom said finally, her voice tighter than usual. Very familiar, Dad added, clearing his throat. Familiar? I asked. They exchanged a look. We'll talk later, Mom murmured. I brushed it off, serving dinner and pouring wine. They ate quietly, asking questions about the mortgage, the interest rate, the neighborhood. But beneath it all was that strange undercurrent of disapproval. When they left, Mom kissed my cheek with a too-quick smile, and Dad clapped my shoulder as if we'd just finished negotiating something unpleasant. I told myself I was imagining things. 2 days later, the truth crashed into me. It was a Sunday morning. I was unpacking books when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened the door cautiously, and there was Hannah. Her 2 kids barreled past me into the living room, squealing as they ran up the stairs. Hannah herself walked in like she owned the place, tossing her purse on my table. Emily, she sang out. So this is the house. I blinked. How did you? Mom and Dad told me, she said breezily, strolling through the living room. She touched the walls, peeked into the kitchen, and smiled like she was inspecting property she already owned. The kids thundered back down the stairs. I want the big bedroom, one shouted. No, I called it first, the other argued. My stomach twisted. What's going on? Oh, don't be silly, Hannah said, waving her hand. We're family. Her words should have reassured me, but instead, they cut. Something in her tone made it sound less like family love and more like a claim. Then she dropped the bomb. You know, the kids are going to love this place, she said, grinning. It's perfect. Mom and Dad promised us this house years ago. Once you settled somewhere else, they said we'd get it for the family. Big yard, good schools, space for the kids. It's exactly what we need. I stared at her, my pulse pounding. What are you talking about? I bought this house. It's mine. Her smile faltered for half a second, then returned, tighter. No, Emily. It's a family house. Mom and Dad said so. They promised us. The words slammed into me like a freight train. My parents had promised my house, the one I worked for, saved for, sacrificed for, to Hannah and her family? I felt invisible in my own home as her kids continued to race through the rooms, shouting about who got which bedroom. Hannah, I said, forcing my voice steady. This isn't theirs to promise. I paid for this. It's under my name. It's not. She cut me off with a shrug. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You don't even need all this space. You're single. No kids. You could get a condo closer to the city. This house is meant for us. Her words sliced through me, each one dripping with entitlement. That night, after they left, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the walls I had painted myself. The silence pressed down, heavier than any argument. This wasn't just about a house. It was about years of being told Hannah mattered more. Years of watching my efforts brushed aside. Years of being reminded I didn't need as much because I was single, because I had no kids, because my life apparently didn't warrant space. I thought this house would finally prove my worth. Instead, it had become the stage for yet another betrayal. But what Hannah didn't realize, and what my parents seemed to forget, was that I wasn't the little girl who used to give up sweaters, bedrooms, and hand-me-downs. I wasn't the daughter who bowed her head and accepted scraps. This time, I wasn't going to roll over. This time, I was going to fight. The morning after Hannah's little tour of my house, I couldn't shake the echo of her kids' voices arguing about who got which bedroom. It played on a loop in my head like a cruel taunt. My home, my hard-won peace, had been turned into a playground for someone else's dream. I brewed coffee strong enough to burn my throat and sat at the kitchen table staring at the steam, replaying every word Hannah had said. Mom and Dad promised us this house years ago. The audacity of it made my stomach twist. I wanted to believe she'd misunderstood, that maybe she exaggerated, but the way she'd walked through the house, confident, entitled, told me otherwise. I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice overly bright, like she'd been expecting the call. Hi, sweetheart. Mom, I said, trying to keep my tone even. Hannah came over yesterday. She said you and Dad promised her my house. There was a pause, then a soft sigh. We didn't promise her your house, Emily. We promised we'd make sure she had a good home for the kids. That's not what she said. She's excited, Mom replied, as if excitement was a valid legal claim. Don't be so literal. Mom, I snapped, my patience thinning. I own the house. It's under my name. There's nothing literal about it. Another sigh, heavier this time. You blindsided us, Emily. Buying a house without telling your parents? Your father has a friend at the bank. We could have helped you. We could have. You mean you could have redirected me? I said, my voice sharp. Away from this house. Silence. I could practically hear her swallowing back words. Finally, she said, we knew this street. We knew the school. We told the Masons years ago that if their house went up for sale, we'd steer it toward Hannah. They've watched her kids. They know the family. It was understood. My blood boiled. The Masons accepted my offer. They saw my financing, my face, my money. They didn't sell to the family. They sold to me. Emily, she said, slipping into that condescending tone that always made me feel 12 years old again. Don't be selfish. You have a good job. You're single. You don't need all that space. Hannah has 2 kids, maybe 3 soon. This is a family home. The words hit me like ice water. She's pregnant. Not yet, Mom said quickly. But they're trying. This would be perfect for them. I'm not a storage locker where you move families in and out, I snapped. I'm a person. And I bought this house. There was no apology. No acknowledgement. Just another sigh. We'll talk later. By mid-afternoon, I was in my car, driving to my parents' place. I needed to face them directly. Dad met me at the door, jaw set. He hugged me stiffly, a pat on the back like I was a guest, not his daughter. Inside, the living room was the same as always. Floral couch, family photos, and that old grandfather clock ticking judgment in the hallway. For a moment I felt 15 again, accused of making drama when all I wanted was fairness. We sat. Mom folded her hands. Dad cleared his throat. This doesn't have to be a fight, he began. Then stop treating my house like a community center, I said. Watch your tone, Mom warned. You told the Masons you'd steer their house to Hannah? Dad's jaw flexed. We said if they ever sold, we wanted to put in a good word for your sister. They've been good to the kids. There's a relationship. And you assumed the universe would rearrange itself around that assumption. It's called family, Mom said coldly. We make arrangements. We take care of each other. No, I said, my voice steady now. I take care of you. I'm the one who drops everything to help. I'm the one who never complains. And now I'm the one who bought a house, and suddenly it's everyone's. Her eyes flickered with irritation. You're being dramatic. What exactly did you expect? I demanded. That I'd hand Hannah a key? We expected you to be reasonable, Dad said. To consider the bigger picture. You always said you wanted to live closer to the city anyway. No, I corrected. You always said that. Their silence confirmed everything. Look, Dad said, finally shifting gears. You got a good deal on that house. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Linda Mason respects the family. She gave you a decent price because she assumed the house would stay in the fold. I almost laughed. My realtor told me my bid beat another buyer by $3,000. That's not a family discount. That's me competing and winning fair and square. Fine, Dad snapped. But don't act like you did this in a vacuum. We had conversations. We set expectations. With Hannah, I said coldly. Not with me. His eyes narrowed. Because we didn't think you'd be reckless. Reckless? Because I bought a house. Because you bought that house, he said. And there it was. They hadn't promised Hannah my house. They'd promised her my possibility. And now that possibility had become reality, and it was mine. I stood. I'm not moving. I'm not trading down. I'm not giving her a bedroom on Sundays or the garage for storage. You don't get to install my life around hers. Mom's voice softened, almost pleading. Emily, please. We can fix this. Put the house back on the market. You'll make a profit. Hannah can move in, and we'll find you something appropriate. The word stung. Appropriate, I repeated. And what's appropriate for me, Mom? A shoebox apartment, because I don't have kids. Dad rose too, his presence looming. Don't talk to your mother like that. I grabbed my bag. Stop treating my future like a yard sale. As I walked to the door, Mom called my name like a reprimand. I didn't look back. In the driveway, my phone buzzed. A text from Hannah. We'll come by Sunday with the kids. They've already picked their rooms. Don't make this ugly, We can do this the easy way. I stared at the message, fury boiling through me. Then I typed back. Do not come to my house without an invitation. Do not send the kids to measure rooms. This is your only notice. The typing dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Finally. You're unbelievable. I didn't reply. That night, I opened my laptop and started a document titled, House Boundaries. I listed, install smart doorbell with camera. Change locks, rekey immediately. Post, no trespassing sign by gate. Contact HOA about unauthorized entry. Consult attorney. Document everything. The list made me feel steadier. Not because the problem was small, but because I was finally big enough to face it. By Friday, the doorbell camera was up and running. Saturday, I found an attorney. Ms. Alvarez listened carefully as I explained. She nodded, then said, "First, congratulations. Buying a house at 35 alone is no small thing." I nearly cried at her words. No one had said that yet. Second, she continued, "Your title is clean, yes?" "Yes," I said, sliding her the deed copy. "Good. Then you're solid. Family expectation is not a lien. What you're dealing with is boundary violation. We'll start with a letter. Any attempt to enter without permission will be treated as trespass. We'll copy your HOA. And you should call the police if anyone refuses to leave." When I left her office with the letter in hand, I felt lighter. I even stopped to buy a little houseplant for my kitchen window, a silly, celebratory gesture. But Sunday morning proved just how far my family would go. The doorbell chimed. I checked my phone. There they were, my parents on the porch in their Sunday best, Hannah and her husband pulling into the driveway behind them. The back of their minivan was packed with bins labeled playroom. My blood ran cold. I opened the door only a crack. "You got my letter," I said. Dad held it in his hand, unopened. "We just want to talk like adults." "Adults don't show up with moving boxes," I said flatly. Hannah climbed out of the van, waving. "Hey, we'll just put a few things in the garage. The kids are with Mom's friend. We'll be quick." I stepped fully into the doorway, blocking her. "No one unloads anything." "Don't make a scene, Dad muttered. "You brought the scene," I snapped. Hannah marched up, eyes blazing. "You're really going to do this? You're going to slam the door on your own family?" I held up my phone. "If you step past this threshold, I'm calling the police." The word police froze everyone. Even Ethan, her husband, hesitated mid-lift with a bin in his arms. "You wouldn't," Hannah hissed. "Try me," I said. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Ethan set the bin back in the van. My parents shifted uncomfortably. Hannah's face twisted with rage. "You're going to regret this," she spat. "You're alone, Emily. You always will be." I met her glare. I bought a house alone. And it turns out I'm good at it. They left in a storm of slammed doors and muttered curses. I locked the door, leaned against it, and for the first time, felt the weight shift. Maybe I wasn't winning yet, but I wasn't losing anymore. The morning after they left with their bins still packed in the van, my phone didn't stop buzzing. First it was Hannah, rapid-fire texts that swung from pleading to angry. "We could have made this work. You don't even need that much space." 5 minutes later, "You're cruel, Em. You know this was supposed to be our house. Then fine. If you want to play this way, don't be surprised when people know the truth." The truth, in Hannah's language, always meant whatever version of events made her look like the victim. I ignored her, but then Mom called, then Dad, then Mom again. By noon, my voicemail was a graveyard of sighs, disappointment, and veiled threats of family meetings. I muted the phone and sat at my kitchen table with a pad of paper. The house was quiet except for the steady hum of the refrigerator. I drew a line down the middle of the page. One side labeled their moves, the other my moves. Under their moves, I wrote, "Claim house was promised. Show up uninvited. Try to move things in. Emotional guilt trips. Threats to tell people the truth." Under my moves. Legal letter, done. Security camera, done. Attorney on retainer, done. Documentation, ongoing. Prepare for escalation. The last point pulsed in my mind. Prepare for escalation. Because I knew Hannah. She never stopped when she was told no. She looked for side doors. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, I came home from work and found a flyer taped to my front door. Black, bold letters screamed, "Beware. Fraud in this house." Underneath was a blurry picture of me, cropped from some family gathering years ago, and words accusing me of stealing money from my dying mother to buy the house. My hands shook as I tore it down. But when I looked around, I saw more taped to the streetlight, to the community mailbox, even on the neighbor's fence. My face, my home, My reputation plastered as if I were a criminal. Humiliation crawled through me. Neighbors slowed their cars to look. One woman walking her dog frowned at the flyer before glancing at me with suspicion. I ripped everyone I could find and carried them inside. That night, I spread them out on the table, the lies screaming at me in bold ink. The next morning, I marched straight into Ms. Alvarez's office. She scanned the flyers, her eyes narrowing. "This," she said crisply, "is defamation. Document everything. Photos, timestamps, witnesses if possible." She's handing us ammunition. I snapped photos of each flyer and even went back out to check the community bulletin board where another had been posted. My doorbell camera had caught a hooded figure taping something in the middle of the night. The gait was unmistakable, Hannah's impatient shuffle, the weight on one leg as if she couldn't stay still. That night, I sat on the couch with the glow of my laptop casting shadows on the walls. I opened the neighborhood's online forum, a place usually reserved for lost pets and yard sale announcements, and typed, "Dear neighbors, some of you may have seen flyers accusing me of fraud. They were posted by a family member attempting to harass me into giving up my legally purchased home. I want to clarify, I am the sole legal owner of this property. Attached is my deed. A harassment complaint has been filed, and the matter is being handled legally. I apologize for the disturbance. Thank you for your understanding." I hit post and braced myself. Replies poured in within the hour. "We figured it was nonsense. Hang in there. Saw her taping something the other night. Thought it was strange. Thanks for clarifying. Don't let her bully you." For the first time in weeks, the shame shifted. Neighbors saw the truth. Hannah hadn't just failed, she'd exposed herself. But she didn't stop. 3 nights later, as I sat reading on the couch, the doorbell camera pinged. I opened the feed, and there she was, standing in the dark, hair loose around her face, eyes wide. She shouted up at my window, her voice carrying through the quiet street. "Emily, you can't hide forever. This house was promised. You're a thief." Her voice cracked on the word thief, shrill and desperate. Lights flicked on in neighboring houses. A man walking his dog stopped and stared. Someone leaned out of a window, phone in hand. I hit record. By the time the police arrived, Hannah was in full hysterics. They cited her for disturbing the peace and escorted her away. I stood behind the blinds, my heart hammering, but beneath it was a strange new sensation. Not fear, not shame, satisfaction. Each tantrum, each desperate move, was another nail in her coffin. The next day, Ms. Alvarez called. "She's crossed the line into criminal harassment. We can file immediately." But my parents didn't see it that way. Mom showed up at my door, her face pinched. "Do you realize what you're doing to your sister? She's humiliated. Everyone's talking. You're making her look crazy." I stared at her. "She is acting crazy." "She's under pressure," Mom argued. "She just wants a home for her kids." "She has a home," I shot back. "What she wants is mine." Dad stepped forward. "This isn't the way to handle family matters. You should have worked it out quietly." "You mean let her move in? Pretend it was hers all along?" His jaw tightened. "Don't twist my words." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You don't get to twist mine anymore. This is my house. And if you can't respect that, then you don't respect me." The silence after that was heavy, final. They left without another word. That evening, I sat alone in my living room, the marigolds outside just visible in the fading light. For years, I'd told myself family meant sacrifice. It meant giving up sweaters, rooms, vacations, even respect. But now, as I watched the shadows crawl across my floor, I realized something profound. Sacrifice had never bought me love. It had only bought me invisibility. And I was done being invisible. I pulled out my laptop and began compiling everything, the flyers, the videos, the texts. I created a folder and titled it Hannah, Evidence. Each file dropped and felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. When I finished, I sat back, heart pounding but lighter than before. Because for the first time, I wasn't just defending. I was preparing for war. After I created the evidence folder, I couldn't stop adding to it. Every text, every voicemail, every photo of a torn flyer or a neighbor's testimony. I collected it all. For years, I'd let Hannah twist stories until I was the villain. But now, the story was mine to tell, and I was going to make sure the record was undeniable. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table with the folder open on my laptop, my notes spread out in neat rows. I realized something. This wasn't just about surviving her harassment. It was about rewriting the balance of power. Hannah had always controlled the narrative, at family dinners, at holidays, even in childhood arguments. She'd cry, she'd perform, and my parents would swoop in to rescue her. I was tired of being the supporting character in her drama. So, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to defend my house. I was going to expose her. The first step came naturally. My neighborhood had already seen the flyers, already watched her screaming in the street. I logged back into the community forum and posted a follow-up. Update: the person responsible for the defamatory flyers has been identified. Police were called after a disturbance outside my home. I want to thank the neighbors who offered support and provided their own video recordings. This is now part of an ongoing legal case. The replies came fast. Good for you for standing up for yourself. She made such a scene. We were embarrassed for her. Let us know if you need witnesses. We'll back you up. For once, people weren't just sympathizing quietly, they were on my side, publicly. That mattered. But the bigger test came with my parents. They called again a few days later, asking me to meet them at their house. Against my better judgment, I went. Maybe a part of me still hoped they'd finally take my side. When I walked in, Hannah was already there. She sat on the couch, arms folded, her face twisted in a perfect mask of outrage. Mom hovered beside her, stroking her arm like she was the victim of some terrible injustice. Dad stood by the fireplace, his mouth a grim line. "Emily," he said flatly, "we need to talk." I crossed my arms. About what? The house I bought. The one you promised to Hannah without my knowledge? The flyers she posted around my neighborhood? Or the fact that she's been screaming outside my window at midnight? Don't exaggerate, Mom snapped. I laughed, pulling out my phone. Exaggerate? Here, watch this. I tapped play on the video of Hannah outside my house, shrieking about theft. The sound filled the living room. Mom's hand froze. Dad's jaw twitched. Hannah's face flushed crimson. "Turn that off," she hissed. "No," I said. "This is who you are." And now everyone sees it. For a moment, the room was silent except for Hannah's recorded voice echoing off the walls. When I finally stopped the video, Dad spoke. "This is family business," he said. "Dragging it into the street, into the courts, that's betrayal." "No," I said firmly. "The betrayal was you telling Hannah this house was hers when it was never yours to give. The betrayal is letting her harass me and pretending I should just accept it. What I'm doing now is protecting myself." Hannah shot to her feet. "You've always been jealous. Admit it. You can't stand that Mom and Dad wanted me to have a real home." I met her eyes, calm now. "I don't need to be jealous. I have a home. The difference is I earn mine." Her hands curled into fists. "You think this is over? I'm not giving up." "Good," I said softly. "Because neither am I." I walked out, leaving their stunned silence behind me. That night, I emailed Ms. Alvarez the new video. "We're past warning letters," I wrote. "File the harassment suit." The next week, the papers were served. Hannah's reaction was predictable. Furious texts, calls at all hours, dramatic Facebook posts about being betrayed by family. I didn't respond. Instead, I kept gathering. Neighbors sent me clips of her midnight rants. My HOA president emailed me confirming they'd seen her tampering with a security camera. Every piece added to the pile. But the moment I knew I had her was at the cafe. I'd suggested meeting to talk things out, and she'd agreed, probably thinking she could still manipulate me face to face. I arrived early, slipped my phone into my bag with the recorder app running, and waited. She swept in 20 minutes late, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She didn't even order a drink, just sat down and leaned across the table. "Ready to admit you can't win?" she sneered. I kept my face neutral. "Rachel, Don't call me that, she snapped. You're not in a position to. Hannah, I corrected, my voice steady. You need to stop. You're harassing me, you're spreading lies, and it's not going to work. She smirked. Or what? You'll sue me? Please. No one's going to side with you. You think paperwork makes you strong? I've got the family. I've got the stories. All I have to do is keep pushing until you break. My pulse raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. So you admit you're lying? She leaned back, smiling. Lying? It's not lying if people believe it. And they will. They always do. I nearly gasped, but kept my face still. Every word was being recorded. I let her ramble for another 15 minutes, spinning wild threats about, telling everyone I stole from our parents, and proving I was unstable. When I finally stood to leave, she looked startled. That's it? You're running away again? No, I said. I'm just done playing your game. As I walked out, my heart pounded with triumph. That recording was the nail in her coffin. Back at home, I sat in my kitchen and played it again, hearing her voice brag about lying. This wasn't just evidence, it was a confession. I emailed it to Ms. Alvarez immediately. Her reply came within the hour. This is excellent. With this, the flyers, the videos, and witness statements, we have an airtight case. Not just civil. Potentially criminal. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. But the next morning, my phone buzzed with a new blow. An email from HR at work. We've received an anonymous complaint alleging financial misconduct. We'll need to meet to discuss. I knew instantly who it was. The rage nearly blinded me. She wasn't just attacking my home, she was coming for my career. At the HR meeting, I laid everything out. I brought the deed, the harassment letter, the police report, even a statement from Ms. Alvarez. My manager leaned back in his chair, clearly irritated. I'm sorry you're going through this, he said. But it's clear this is a personal vendetta. We'll close the matter. I left with my job intact, but the fire inside me burned hotter than ever. Hannah wanted to ruin me. She wanted me small, broken, begging. She had no idea that every step she took was leading her closer to her own destruction. Because now I wasn't afraid. Now I was planning. The cafe recording looped in my ears for days. It's not lying if people believe it. And they will. They always do. Every time I replayed it, my stomach twisted, but not from fear anymore. From possibility. Hannah had finally given me what I'd never had before, undeniable proof of who she really was. I sat at my kitchen table one evening, the marigolds glowing faintly through the window, and thought, for years, she's used lies as her weapon. Now her own words are going to undo her. The next morning, I met with Ms. Alvarez. She listened to the recording, her lips tightening in satisfaction. This, she said, tapping her pen on the desk, is exactly what we needed. Between the flyers, the late-night harassment, the disturbance calls, and this recording, we don't just have a civil harassment case. We have a chance to dismantle her credibility completely. How do we use it? I asked. We'll include it in the suit. But I'd also recommend a strategic reveal. If your sister relies on manipulation, the best way to neutralize her is to take away her audience. Right now, your parents still see her as the victim. We can change that. The idea lit something inside me. For years, family dinners had been Hannah's stage. She'd perform her dramas, and I'd play the quiet counterweight, rolled eyes dismissed as bitterness. But what if, just once, I flipped the script? So I began planning. Step 1. Get the family in one place. I sent out a message to my parents, Hannah, and a handful of relatives who'd always been her chorus. Dinner at La Bella Trattoria. My treat. Just family. We need to clear the air. Hannah replied instantly, finally. I'll be there. Mom wrote, thank you, sweetheart. This means a lot. Even Dad agreed, albeit curtly. See you Sunday. I could already imagine their faces when the recording played. But while I waited for Sunday, Hannah kept pushing. On Wednesday night, I heard the soft thud of something against my door. I checked the camera feed. Another flyer, slapped there in the dark. This one screamed, ask her boss about her fraud. The next morning, I ripped it down and drove to the HOA office. The manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Green, looked at the flyer and frowned. "We've had complaints about someone taping these around the community," she said. "Do you know who it is?" "Yes," I said simply. "My sister. And I have proof." I showed her the video of Hannah pacing outside my house, the flyers, the police report. Mrs. Green's frown deepened. "This violates community policy," she said. "We'll send a formal notice. If she's seen here again, we'll ban her from the property." It was a small victory, but an important one. Every barrier I built made her smaller, more desperate. Thursday evening, Mom showed up unannounced. She stood on my porch with a Tupperware of stew in her hands, her eyes tired. "Emily," she said softly, "please, don't do this dinner. It'll only make things worse." I stared at the Tupperware, at her trembling hands. For a moment, the child in me wanted to take it, to say yes, to dissolve into the comfort of soup and old patterns. But I forced myself still. "It won't make things worse, Mom," I said. "It'll make them clear." Her face pinched. "Why can't you just let it go?" "Because letting go has cost me everything. This time, I'm holding on." She left the stew on the step, muttering, "You'll regret this." But I didn't pick it up. By Saturday night, my plan was ready. I charged my recorder, organized the files on my phone, and printed copies of the deed, the HOA letter, and the police reports. When I looked at the folder, I almost laughed. It looked like I was prepping for trial. And in a way, I was. Sunday came. I arrived at La Bella Trattoria early, nerves buzzing in my stomach. I asked the hostess for the private room, and within minutes my family trickled in. Mom and Dad sat stiffly at one end of the table. Hannah arrived last, sweeping in with her usual flair, wearing a bright red dress like she was the guest of honor. "Finally," she said, sliding into her seat. "Now we can put this all behind us." I folded my hands on the table. "Actually, that's what I want too." The waiter poured water, took orders, and left. The silence that followed was thick. I took a breath. "Hannah, you've told people this house was promised to you. You've spread lies, posted flyers, harassed me at night. That ends tonight." Her mouth curled in a smirk. "Oh, come on, Em. Everyone knows." I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, loud and clear. "It's not lying if people believe it. And they will. They always do." The words hung in the air like smoke. For the first time, Hannah's mask slipped. Her face flushed red, her hands shaking on the table. "That's taken out of context," she shrieked. Mom gasped. Dad's eyes darted between us. My cousin Amanda covered her mouth, whispering, "Oh my God." "No context changes those words," I said calmly. "This is who she is. And I won't be bullied anymore." Hannah lunged for the phone, but I pulled it back. "This recording, the flyers, the videos, it's all part of a lawsuit. The neighbors have seen it. The HOA has seen it. And now you've all seen it too. The truth is out." The silence that followed was crushing. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice low. "Hannah, is this true?" She stammered, tears welling. I just wanted." Mom tried to defend her, but her voice cracked. "She's under stress, she." "No," I said. "She's underexposure. That's the difference." For the first time, the room wasn't nodding along to Hannah's story. They were staring at her, some in pity, others in disgust. I stood, gathering my folder. "Dinner's on me. Consider this my last family meeting." Hannah's voice chased me out of the room, high-pitched and broken. "You'll regret this, Emily. You think you've won, but you haven't." But as I stepped into the cool night air, I felt lighter than I had in years. Because for once, Hannah's performance had failed. And for the first time, I wasn't the supporting character. I was the one holding the script. The fallout from the dinner was immediate. By Monday morning, my phone was buzzing with cousins' texts, all variations of shock. "Emily, I had no idea she was like that. I'm so sorry we ever believed her. If you need me to testify about the flyers, I will." For once, the current had shifted. Hannah's audience was shrinking, and she knew it. That night, She posted a rambling screed on Facebook. Some people think they can buy family loyalty with money and lawyers, but blood is thicker than deeds. Watch out when greed takes over your own sister. I took a screenshot, smiled, and added it to the evidence folder. By Wednesday, the court date was set for the harassment hearing. Ms. Alvarez assured me we had everything we needed. The flyers, the video of Hannah screaming in the street, the HOA notice, the cafe recording. Her own words will undo her, she said confidently. Still, I was nervous. My parents had barely spoken to me since the dinner, and when they did, it was always some guilt-laden plea. Don't humiliate your sister further. She's fragile. Fragile. That word made me want to laugh. Fragile was porcelain. Fragile was glass. Hannah was neither. She was fire, burning anything that stood in her way. But now, I had the extinguisher. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. Navy blazer, crisp blouse, hair pulled back in a bun. I looked in the mirror and thought professional. Capable. Solid. Everything Hannah's lies said I wasn't. When I arrived at the courthouse, Hannah was already there, flanked by Mom and Dad. She wore a pale dress, hair loose around her shoulders, makeup smudged just enough to look like she'd been crying. She had always known how to costume herself. "Emily," Mom hissed as I passed, "you don't have to do this." "Yes," I said quietly. "I do." Inside the courtroom, the judge listened patiently as Ms. Alvarez presented our case. She laid out the timeline, the promise that never had legal standing, the uninvited attempts to move in, the flyers, the late-night harassment. Then she played the cafe recording. The words filled the silent room. It's not lying if people believe it. And they will. They always do. Gasps rippled through the small audience. Hannah's face blanched. When it was her turn, she tried to spin. I was taken out of context. I was joking. My sister has always twisted things to make me look bad. But her voice cracked, and her eyes darted nervously. Without an audience primed to adore her, she faltered. The judge's ruling was clear. Hannah was ordered to cease all contact with me except through legal counsel. She was barred from my property and fined for defamation. When the gavel came down, I felt a surge of relief, so powerful I nearly cried. But Hannah wasn't finished. Outside the courtroom, she lunged toward me, her voice sharp. "You think this is over? You ruined me. Everyone's going to hate you for this." I held her gaze, calm now. "No, Hannah. You ruined yourself." Mom grabbed her arm, pulling her back, but her eyes were on me, angry, desperate, almost pleading. For a flicker of a moment, I felt the old guilt try to stir. But then I remembered every flyer, every lie, every scream outside my window. And the guilt evaporated. That night, I celebrated alone in my kitchen with a glass of wine. I sat by the window, watching the marigolds sway in the breeze, and whispered, "I did it." But victory wasn't just legal. It was personal. The next weekend, the HOA pinned a notice to the community board. Due to repeated harassment and violation of community policy, Hannah Parker is barred from entering this property. Any trespass will result in immediate police involvement. Neighbors stopped me on walks to say they supported me. One even said, "You're stronger than most of us would have been." For once, I wasn't the invisible sister. I was the woman who stood up, who fought back. Still, I knew Hannah. She would try to rebuild her narrative, to find some corner where she was still the victim. But the difference now was that no one believed her anymore. The power of her story was gone, replaced by evidence, truth, and her own voice betraying her. I thought back to the little girl I had been, the one who gave up sweaters, bedrooms, attention, and space because Hannah wanted them. That girl had grown into a woman who finally said no. And this time, no was enough to change everything. The house felt different after that. Safer. Warmer. Mine in a way it hadn't been before. Each night when I locked the door, it wasn't just about keeping Hannah out. It was about keeping my peace in. The weeks after the court ruling felt strangely quiet. For months, my life had been a storm of shouting, flyers, texts, and threats. Now, each day passed without interruption. No pounding on my door, no late-night rants under my window, No new lies scrawled across flyers in the neighborhood. It felt almost unnatural, like my body didn't know how to rest. I'd wake at night expecting the camera alert to buzz, only to find the feed clear, the street empty, the house silent. Slowly, I let myself believe the worst was behind me. Of course, Hannah didn't vanish completely. She still tried to make herself the victim online. She posted cryptic messages. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. Or, imagine suing your own blood for something that should have been shared. A few friends chimed in with sympathy, but the comments were fewer now. And when someone asked bluntly, "Didn't the court already side with your sister?" the thread went suspiciously quiet. Her stage was shrinking, and I didn't need to follow it anymore. One Saturday, while watering my marigolds, I saw my neighbor Mrs. Green walking her dog. She stopped by the fence and said, "Emily, I just wanted to tell you, you handled all of this with dignity. A lot of people would have folded. You didn't." I smiled, genuinely touched. "Thank you. That means more than you know." She leaned in slightly. "And for what it's worth, I think you showed your family who you are. They can't pretend not to see it anymore." Her words stayed with me long after she left. Because that was the real victory. Not just keeping my house, but forcing everyone, especially my parents, to see me as more than the responsible daughter who always gave way. The next family gathering was proof. Thanksgiving at my aunt's house, weeks after the ruling. I almost didn't go, afraid of the tension, but something inside me wanted to. Not to prove a point, but to stand in my own space without apology. When I arrived, conversations faltered. Hannah was there, sitting stiffly at the table, her eyes darting anywhere but toward me. Mom hovered near her, protective, while Dad poured himself a drink and stayed quiet. But my cousins? They greeted me warmly. Amanda hugged me and whispered, "You are incredible." Another cousin, usually quiet, squeezed my hand and said, "It's about time someone stood up to her." For once, I wasn't the shadow at the edge of the room. I wasn't the afterthought. People sought me out, asked me about work, complimented the marigolds I'd posted a picture of online. Hannah, usually the star of every gathering, sat silent, her smile brittle. At one point, Mom tried to steer conversation my way. "Emily, how's the house?" she asked a little too brightly. I looked her in the eye and said, "It's peaceful. Mine." She flinched, but she didn't argue. Later that evening, as dessert was being served, Hannah finally cracked. "You all think she's some hero," she snapped, her voice shaking. "But she stole from me. That house was supposed to be ours." The room went silent. All eyes turned toward her. Amanda spoke first. "No, Hannah. You lied. We heard the recording." Another cousin chimed in. "You embarrassed yourself." "Not Emily." Even my aunt, who usually avoided conflict, shook her head. "You need to take responsibility." Hannah's face burned red. She pushed back from the table and stormed out, Mom hurrying after her. I sat there, hands folded calmly, my heart steady. For years, I dreamed of this moment. Hannah exposed, her performance unraveling. And now that it had happened, I felt no gloating, no triumph. Just peace. Because I finally understood, revenge wasn't about humiliating her. It was about reclaiming myself. And I had. That night, back in my house, I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window. The marigolds glowed faintly under the porch light. The locks on my door clicked solidly into place. I whispered, "Mine?" And this time, the word didn't just mean the house. It meant my life, my choices, my worth. The little girl who once gave up her sweater, her space, her dignity, she was gone. In her place stood a woman who had drawn a line, defended it, and watched the tide finally turn. Hannah could keep spinning her stories, but they no longer mattered. The audience was gone. The stage was empty. And I finally, fully was free.